Hello world! My guest today has an extraordinary background in artificial intelligence and is known for bridging the gap between neuroscience and technology. Currently, she is bringing voice AI to market and advising an incredible startup to help patients with neurological diseases. With expertise in big companies as well as startups across marketing and operations, Katie Hurley, Senior Director of Marketing at Replicant, is helping to lead the charge when it comes to crafting phenomenal human-to-machine conversations to improve customer experiences everywhere. Katie Hurley, welcome to the show. Are you ready to get radically transparent with me?
Absolutely.
Fantastic.
On a Thursday.
On a Thursday,
On
here
a
we
Thursday.
go. The weekend is so close we can taste it.
Yes.
So listen, with that said, I have done my research on your LinkedIn and I've definitely Googled a little bit about Replicant. I know you've come highly recommended to speak to, and I was hoping we could kick off the show with what I hope is an easy, radically transparent question. But I think it's fascinating to learn how marketers actually got to where they are, because you could be an accidental marketer, you could be, a marketer by craft. But could you give us a brief look at your professional journey and how you found yourself marketing AI in general?
Yeah, no, it's a great question. And I think what you pose there is finding yourself into a career path almost accidentally is very true. And I don't think you're always told this when you're kind of going on your career endeavor, which is sometimes you learn what you like by also learning what you don't like. And so I had a different start. I actually started kind of on the analytical side in finance and sales strategy, and naturally bumped into product marketing. There's a whole story as to how product marketing, but we won't get quite into that. But the AI piece is really interesting. When I was in finance, I attended my first kind of AI meetup. There's a room full of like 300 engineers, total fish out of water. And I was in finance at the time, and they showed how you could use AI on an Excel spreadsheet with a finance example. So all of a sudden I'm like, oh my God, AI is going to change the world. Like, this is here to stay. And so that kind of got the AI spark going. And then, fast forward a few years later, I was fortunate enough to land on the product marketing team, working with MetaMind, a company at Salesforce that they had acquired, and
Okay.
going really deep, no pun intended, on deep learning. And then we launched Einstein and a lot more details within that, but it very much, fortunately, was almost like an organic path that kind of found itself.
Okay.
And couldn't be more excited to be, a replicant doing a similar thing, right? Bringing AI to market.
It sounds
So
like all you need to say to somebody to change their world is spreadsheets and AI, and watch how it will change your life. And that seems to be, very fascinating to all of us, because I think there is a dread whenever well, maybe not for all, but for me at least, when I see a spreadsheet, I start to get a little panicky. But with that, you mentioned, right, Replicant developed the world's first thinking machine, or perhaps I read that. But would you be able to maybe walk us through what does that actually mean, and why is it such a game changer?
Oh, exciting question. So super transformational. And that's the feeling that I got when I first saw a demo of the technology. If you think about how we've been introduced to AI today, right? There's been many layers. It's been introduced on the data side to help us make better and smarter decisions. And now what we're seeing is the evolution of human to machine communications, where we can actually have end-to-end conversations with machines. And so it kind of started with Amazon Alexa, very command based. What's, the weather? Can you change the song? Kind of one in, one out kind of questions. And with Replicant, our thinking machine, we can have, as I said, full on end to end conversations that actually resolve. We're applying it to customer service, resolve tier one customer service issues. There's a ton of complexity behind it in terms of the AI that we've developed. One thing I'll add that's really neat is we've been able to provide this on the phone line. So if you think about how difficult that is from a technology perspective, you're dealing with old, copper wire, latency issues with telephony. And so just in its essence of being able to do that is pretty profound.
Wow.
So yes, very exciting times right now.
Wow. Okay. Okay. So, kind of piggybacking off of that question and taking it a step further, what do your clients look like, and what value are you bringing to your customers?
Yeah, I mean, probably what's most exciting about Replicant is we're able to bring this technology, which, a lot of people have had doubts about, right? It hasn't necessarily worked for them, or they've started with chatbots and it's been a poor experience. So not only are we having to rebuild trust, but we're able to work with enterprise customers and we can deliver this technology at scale, which is first of its kind. And we think about how we're transforming the customer service experience. We're basically providing a new way to run a contact center. So historically, it's been very human ops driven. How many agents can I have in order to, handle customer demand? And what we saw with the pandemic is all that went through the roof, essentially, right? Demand spiked and then it slowed down when travel slowed down, just becoming a very hard model to predict. And so when you apply something like the thinking machine, you can have customer service that's always on. It can scale up or down depending on customer demand, a whole suite of benefits. You can save costs, and it really allows humans to do what they're good at, which is handling those more emotionally driven calls and then letting a machine handle the more repetitive ones that are high volume.
Which I think is phenomenal because also when you think of, support centers and contact centers, a lot of times there are a lot of basic questions, but at the same time, like you'll put a community, let's say, knowledge base or kind of community center, if you will, where you can go and find these questions. But I think a lot of times people still like to have that interaction, whether or not they're getting that answer from a bot or not. That interaction is what we're seeking. And sometimes it can be quite annoying when you're searching through like the knowledge base, trying to find why you need to troubleshoot something. So just to be able to chat it through, even if it's a bot on the other side, but it's an intelligent bot, I think, it already calms me down because how many times have you literally been searching knowledge bases, getting frustrated, or even talking to chat agents and perhaps, timing wise, I know there's a whole art form of like communicating with somebody on the other line of chat, in a timely fashion. And I think if you have that bot that's able to go ahead using AI to understand that, I mean, that's making leaps and strides. And especially, in kind of that B2B sense, I think it's able to also probably improve the customer experience so much.
Yep. Yep. I'm as you're saying these things, I'm like, do you want to join Replicant? You hit the nail on the head. It's exactly right. And what's really interesting is a lot of us think, oh, the phone may be dying, so to speak, right? We have new generations coming up that want to interact on applications and just get things done in a different and new way. But it's actually the reverse. People still, when you look at the data, they want to speak to an agent. But with our current model, it's nearly impossible. You have hold times, wait times that are through the roof.
Horrible.
And so what if you can layer in AI as the first line of defense? You actually make it, ironically, easier to speak to a human agent. So there's a lot of interesting aspects there. And I think customer service is a really neat space to kind of start this technology moving forward because it's very human, interactive driven, and there's a high volume of conversation, and that's what you need.
I love it. And I think, it helps make, like you said, by the time that end user gets to a human, that human is going to be able to do what they do best, make it meaningful with that emotional interaction, which I think is phenomenal. Now, thinking through all of that, right? I'm sure there's no shortage of like A/B testing when it comes to maybe analyzing transcripts and trying to understand, what does the human need to take over, or what does the data need to tell me or do? What could possibly be keeping you up at night in terms of what you do on a day to day?
Yeah, it's a great question. And it's a great question because, many feelings that you have, they stay pretty stagnant, right? When you're at a startup or a fast growing company, what kept you up at night, 6 months ago or 2 months ago is totally different than the next 6 months. And so I think for us as a team, it's knowing what to prioritize and why. We're very, very good at that. We really march our company towards a set of kind of key goals, and regardless of function, we map to those. I'd also say the team part. I mean, as we grow, and especially in a remote environment, and all of us have heard this, is how do we make people feel welcome when they join the company and get them off to a good start? A company is only, basically, it's the ingredients of what it's made of, which is its people. And so that's another thing that we think about at Replicant, which is how do we create an exciting culture and really get the onboarding process right as we grow.
So listen, two questions for you there. One, has
Yeah.
Replicant always been a work from anywhere, work from home working model, or has the pandemic changed that?
So we have an interesting flavor to us, which I've always appreciated about our culture, which is even before the pandemic, we're very much driven by kind of a honest first culture, which is if you're able to get your work done in the way that suits you, fabulous. And so we had offices, in San Francisco, a few other areas, but even then we had people who would work from home 2 or 3 days out of the week. And then we'd have a great time in the office together. So by nature, we've been flexible. Now we are remote. And then what we do is we bring everyone together through offsites. And so we're able to we had 2 recently, a go-to-market one, a product-focused one. And so it's amazing. You get so much more done within 2 to 3 days. You get to see your coworkers. And then you also can explore how you want to run your schedule and not be tied to an office, dare I say it.
I love that you shared that. Thank you for sharing that, because I know a lot of our community, we're kind of all battling with that, hybrid model, and how do you make things work? And in a marketing team, I have one camp of colleagues who really believe, office, 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 especially for marketing, because great ideas, you never know when they're going to come. And, if you interrupt someone in their conversation, you never know what could come of that. And then I have others that are like, no, I love, working from home and the silence, and I get so much more done because nobody's knocking on my door or coming over to my desk, and I can focus on writing. So really, thanks for sharing that. And you're going back to your question in terms of company culture. What I'd be curious to know is how are you making your employees feel part of the culture, or what are some of the things or initiatives besides the offsites that you are doing for your team to really make them understand and feel and know that they are part of the Replicant family?
Yep, it's a good question. And I think there's more tangible things, there's more subtle things, right? We recently had our CMO join, Peter Isaacson. And, one thing he does really well is when he gets on a call with anyone, he starts it off by just checking in, seeing how someone's doing. So adding that human element, right? We're at a startup, you have to move fast, you need to get work done. But sometimes you can get more done when everyone feels good and they're ready to be on that call. So that's a more subtle example. More proactive one, we have things like Kudos, which is in Slack. And so we have an active platform to be able to share with someone, hey, you've done a great job on this, or show appreciation.
And
I
does
think
that go out to the whole company when somebody gets
does.
kind of like what happens on LinkedIn?
Yeah.
Nice.
And what's neat is it doesn't drive a culture of, like MVP type culture and then others feel left out. It's just very organic. And we've been fortunate enough to kind of have that in our DNA. And hopefully as we expand, it continues. But I think especially in times like this, where there's so much uncertainty, showing appreciation, as simple as it sounds, it can go so far in terms of increasing productivity, how someone feels at companies, et cetera. So
Agreed. I love the kudos. We'll have to have the kudos is great. So listen, I want to talk for a moment about, there's a phrase on your LinkedIn that I find fascinating and I want to chat about it. It's the convergence between neuroscience, AI, and technology. I know it's a big topic. I know it could be an episode all on its own. But I want to know, what do you find most interesting about each, and how, honestly, how are they related? Because I read all those things, circle here. How do we bring them all together?
Yeah, so you're poking at a passion spot, which is really exciting. At face value, you would think, of course, they're related, right? You have neuroscience, you have AI, and we've always been told like general intelligence is going to happen, AI is going to be as smart as our own brains, et cetera. And then you have the technology layer. And I would say that first statement isn't quite true. You can learn a lot from neuroscience, but we also don't know a lot about our brain. In fact, we only use probably 10% of it on a daily basis. So in textbooks and every piece of literature we've ever learned quickly gets out of date.
Yeah.
And that's actually something that neuroscience and AI have in common. They're incredibly fast moving and they're always changing. And there's a million ways you can approach the same problem to get to a solution, so to speak. So very similar in the way that they are complex. The technology piece, and where it kind of comes full circle, is AI is being applied to technology to really improve and enhance our productivity, right? And it's still getting off the ground, but we're definitely starting to see it come through. And then when you connect all three, which is very much more in the future, you will start to see, I believe, the convergence between us, technology, and AI. So if you think about a brain-machine interface, that has to do with the brain, aka neuroscience, layered in with AI and technology, And then we can get into a whole suite of things, which I know this episode's not about that, but there's some
We can
very
bring you
interesting things
back to
happening.
take a deeper
Yes,
dive. It is
yes,
fascinating. We had a few conversations in terms of, marketing and neuroscience. It is fascinating how the brain
yep.
works. So I'd love to bring it back to deeper
Yay.
dive. And anyone listening in, go ahead and follow Katie on LinkedIn because she's oftentimes talking a lot about this, and it is very fascinating to follow you. So I highly recommend it. I want to actually bridge for a moment on our last question because
Right.
I know in marketing, and truth be told, I've been in these shoes, right? Our CEO makes an announcement that we've introduced some AI technology, or we're gonna, get rid of these positions because, or he jokes rather, we're gonna get rid of these
Right.
positions because a machine can do it better than you. And I think for some of us, that definitely instills a little bit of fear and uncertainty of the future of AI and our jobs. So what I want to know from someone who really is like in the field, getting their hands dirty, do you think, one, like how will AI impact our jobs? Should we be fearful of losing them? And then if so, which ones do you think AI is going to impact most?
Right. Yeah. I mean, this is a question that comes up time and time again, and it goes back to neuroscience. It's our lizard brain thinking, am I okay? Or is AI going to take over? And it's all about how you look at it. A few examples come to mind. So one that our CEO, Gadi Shamia, brings up, which is a really good analogy, and he talks about the ATM. The
Okay.
ATM was born, right? How we pay for things, get money, even though I haven't used one in a while. And that doesn't mean that banking and humans went away entirely, but it did automate a lot of things that could be automated. And so I think that's the smartest way to look at it, which is we're progressive as humans. We're always trying to improve ourselves. So why not apply machines to the things that can be done in a more let's see, like a step-by-step way, right? So that's one thing to consider. And then the types of jobs, that's a little bit harder to answer. I think it maps more to the types of industries it's impacting.
Okay.
So one thing I can speak towards is customer service.
Mm-hmm.
And this is something that definitely comes up, right? Because the thinking machine can be, we've seen, as effective as an agent in certain scenarios.
Yeah.
But what we're seeing right now, especially with the pandemic, is there's a change. There's a change in the type of jobs people want to have. They want to have meaningful jobs. A lot of people have been out of work. They're coming back, but maybe they want to try something different, maybe more impactful. And so call centers are hurting because of that. It's harder to hire agents right now, and they need to in order to maintain, customer satisfaction. And so AI can come in and kind of be that glue and take on those repetitive high volume calls and then alleviate agents so that they can have a more impactful career going forward.
I
So
like
there's a lot of richness and goodness to actually come the more open we are to, being symbiotic with technology, I would say.
Absolutely. And two things come to mind. So, first off, I've never heard AI be compared to an ATM. And I have to say, after hearing that, I probably will never look at an ATM the same because
Never.
that's a brilliant analogy. I never thought, like, oh, right. Like the ATM at one point was a person basically sitting behind a desk
Right.
giving you your money. And now it's just so easy. So, I think that's a fantastic analogy. And in terms of, the call centers, I also think it it's leaps and bounds helping agents, and I hope one day maybe maybe the call center itself, I think we've seen during COVID, it's kind of abolished right there, that maybe you can even keep me honest here,
Yep.
kind of having, I remember the days you go into a call center and you have like your call center manager and the people on the floor and people working in shifts, and I almost
Yeah.
think with COVID and then AI, it's also changing, I would say, kind of that grueling call center grind, right? Like it almost seems like it can
Exactly.
make better and happier employees because they're not confined to their headphones and desk and shifts,
Yeah.
but rather kind of hybrid into this AI, hopefully making their career more exciting and happy employees, right? We know, right? Happy employees tend to love where they work. When you love where you work, you end up staying longer. So maybe
Exactly.
it's like for full-time employees, it's almost a win-win. And that's another area of AI comes in that, like, as you were saying, I
Right.
was like, wow, okay,
Right.
it's not so scary. It
Well,
actually is
yep.
enhancing our job.
And Einstein, I believe one of his most repeated quotes is the definition of insanity is doing something the same way and expecting different results. So it's only natural that we need to apply new ways of doing things if we want to get better results, right? And then there's books written on the utopia of when AI comes into place, it will free us up for more creative, futures, et cetera, et cetera. So we're not quite there yet. But each step we take, we get to see more and more of what it could look like, which is really exciting. I
love it. And I love that quote. All right, last question. So, and this one, definitely we're going to put our AI to the side, but I know that, every person, we're so much more than our LinkedIn profile. We have a LinkedIn presence, we have our LinkedIn professional persona. And I think it's fun, especially when you're selling to somebody, you get to look them up on LinkedIn and think in your head, okay, how am I going to talk to this person? What am I going to ask them? So I want to ask you today, what's one thing you can actually tell us right now that is not something that we would know about you from only looking at your LinkedIn profile?
Oh my gosh. I'm like, throw an example, right? Because I could go like any direction with that. So what are my guardrails?
I'll let you be the judge, but
okay. We've heard great things. This is a kitschy example. It's probably not that funny anymore, but I mean, back in a prior life, I was in a few eating contests, which I think a little bit bizarre, but I love food, and you know what? That just happened. So that's an interesting one.
Wait. Let's go back. Eating content. So what have you eaten, and have you won any of them?
So, oh gosh. One was like a huge apple pie, Costco size, with a massive pizza. That's gross. I ate it all. I came in second place.
That's amazing.
I don't like losing. The team knows this, even though I lose in ping pong. Now we have a ping pong kind of competition going at our company. And another one was just a bit more for fun. It was speed Chumbaco challenge. So you take a taco or you take a burger and then 2 tacos around the burger, and it's whoever can eat it the fastest. So that was gross. The other one was filling, and the other one was not too pretty to look at.
Well, that's amazing. I've never participated in a food eating challenge, but are any of those available on YouTube by chance?
Oh my gosh, if only. That was, I think, the days when not everything was captured on video and we were spared from it. Now you see, I was in a restaurant the other day and something kind of odd was happening. Everyone's phone's out and videoing. It's like, you are never safe. So I'm safe. None of that's on video except now verbally.
I love it. Wow, Katie, this was a fantastic interview. Thank you so much for joining us. I want to just, close out the show. I know a lot of our audience and our community, they're always looking to learn something new, follow someone new. And perhaps anybody who's listening in who is in the AI space or call center space or, marketing in that arena, where can we reach you? What's the best forum to communicate on? Where are you most active?
Yeah, so I would say, I'm happy, Katie at replicant.ai. Maybe I should be more cautious about giving out the email, but hey, why not? I can always connect to anyone who's interested in learning, obviously, more about our company, to the right folks.
Okay.
And then always happy to connect on LinkedIn. I have to say, I'm less of an adopter of Twitter and Instagram and all the other social media platforms, which maybe I should work on, but they just haven't grabbed me quite yet. So yes, LinkedIn it is.
Amazing. Katie, thank you so much for joining us.
So much.
Thanks for tuning in to the Radically Transparent podcast, brought to you by Oktopost, the only social media management and employee advocacy platform architected for B2B. I'm Jennifer Gutman, your host and director of social strategy here at Oktopost. And if you love today's show, we'd love if you subscribe, rate, and give a raving review wherever you get your podcasts. For more discussion on B2B social media marketing, be sure to follow Oktopost on LinkedIn. And of course, to gain access to all our free social media marketing and employee advocacy resources, head on over to our website, www.oktopost.com. Until next time.